Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for joining. Let me just go to the chat. So yeah, this is the Build Your Work Experience session. I'm specifically going to focus on placements and internships. So the placement year option for first and second year students and the internships that we have at the university. My name is Laura Foster. I'm the Placements and Work Experience Manager here at Roehampton University. I look after everything to do with placements, work experience, and supporting students to ensure that they're successful in gaining placements and work experience in whatever form that is. Just move along, bear with me. So the aims of this session are to understand the benefits of work experience, and then I'm going to provide some initial information about the internships at the university and the placement year option, and make you aware specifically about processes and timelines. We're going to talk a little bit about what you should be doing now, and then I'll provide an overview very quickly at the end of the support available within the university to help you apply for an internship or a placement. So hopefully that you've got a plan for leaving the session and how you can get support. As I said to some of you earlier, please use the chat function. If you have a question, pop it in the chat. We're a small group, which is great because I should be able to keep an eye on the chat as we go and answer your questions as and when you ask them. If not, I will get to them at the end, so don't worry. And hopefully it is useful. So just something really quickly to start us off is I just want to ask you all a question, which is which of the following do you think counts as work experience? So just put your answers in the chat, but which of these things do you think count as work experience? So a placement as part of your course, an internship, volunteering, a full-time job, a part-time job, or a position of responsibility at the university or elsewhere. So things like a course rep or any involvement with the students' union or a trustee maybe at a charity. So if you could just put in the chat, what of those do you think count as work experience? You can see someone's typing, which is great. Good answer, Hannah. So yeah, well done, all of them. Anyone else got any thoughts? You think all of them as well? Yeah, that's great. So yeah, it is one of those things just to demonstrate that the answer is all of them. So well done if you got that. But really, this is I'm just going to go back to that list. This is just to show how broad work experience as a term is. It does encompass quite a lot, and there's probably more beyond that that I've left out if we're being quite specific. So it's a really good thing to think about when we talk about building work experience. Today I'm going to focus on a placement year and internships, but do bear in mind that there are other ways of gaining work experience through other schemes, opportunities, types of things that you can do out in society or within the university. So that's worth bearing in mind. Um, Given what we've just said about all of them, who already has some form of work experience? Who has already done something that was on that list? You can raise your hand or just put in the chat what you've done, whatever you prefer. Has anyone got nothing, not done anything, and that's absolutely fine? I can see people are typing, so I'll just wait. None, that's absolutely fine. If you don't have any work experience, not a problem at all. And that's actually the purpose of this session. We're going to talk about how you can build it and get some. And we'll talk about the benefits of it in just a second as well. Um, okay, great. One of you is in the process of getting volunteer work. But apart from that, nothing. Okay, that's absolutely fine. That's the really useful for me to know so that I can go into this session and have an idea of where you're all at. Another quick question is if you could just put in the chat very quickly whether you're a first or a second year student, that would be really helpful. So while you're all answering that, I'll move on and start presenting. So that's great. Thank you for everyone that's answering. So second, first, fab. If the others, yeah, keep answering, and that would be really useful for me. So, the benefits of work experience. Why is it good to start building your work experience? So, the first thing is that it will develop new skills and knowledge. You'll learn skills and apply. It might be directly related to your subject, to what you're studying at university, and that will be great because then you can apply your subject knowledge in a working environment. If it isn't, that doesn't matter. You're going to develop skills regardless. So really, the point here is that you're going to develop skills that you didn't have before, and any workplace environment will do that, even if it's not entirely obvious what those skills are. It's going to give you a better understanding of your future career direction. So going on doing any sort of work experience, it will allow you to discover your strengths, what you're good at, but also it will allow you to discover what you don't like so much or what you're not so good at. And that's a really important thing. Um, oh, okay, we're having some issues with the content I can see again. Can I just pause there? Because I can see that some people cannot see um, the content. And I'm just wondering if it's a problem for everyone or if it's a problem for just one student. So if you can see the content, could you just raise your hand so I know? Okay, so you can see the content now, Aleem. Is that, yeah? Is everything working now as it should? I'm going to continue. I'm hoping everything's fine. I'll continue. And if you can't see the content, if anything doesn't show up for whatever reason, what I'll probably have to do is continue for the sake of everyone else in the session. And I will send you the slides afterwards, and we can always go through them if needed. Um, so yeah, the session is being recorded so that, yeah, you should be able to see the content when it's recorded. But I'll continue for now. So the other thing that it's going to do, another benefit of work experience, is that it's going to give you a better understanding of your future career direction. As I said, you're going to be able to discover your strengths, what you do enjoy, but also really importantly, what you don't enjoy and what you're maybe not so good at. And that's really important to work out before you graduate and leave university. And I always use a personal example here. When I was at university, I was doing a philosophy degree, and I was convinced that I was going to go into law and do a law conversion after university finished. And I spent the summer of my second year working at a law firm and volunteering and gaining some work experience at a law firm. And it was not what I expected at all. It was completely different to what I thought it would be. The atmosphere was different, the work was different. And I'm really, really glad that I found that out before I graduated and spent a lot of money on a law conversion course and a lot of time and effort studying to become a lawyer. So even if you are gaining work experience and finding out what you don't want to do, that's important and that's useful. So no work experience is wasted. It's also worth saying that I still referenced that law experience that I gained on my CV, and I still used it to demonstrate to employers that I developed skills. So it was still useful in one sense. It was just that I found out I didn't want to do it as a career. So even if you don't enjoy something, having a better understanding of what you do and don't enjoy is always a good thing. Thirdly, it will help you to gain new contacts. So, networking is a bit of a funny term, but essentially it just means communicating. And when you are doing any sort of work experience, you'll be communicating with other people that work there, colleagues, your manager, your team. And that's really useful. It can be really helpful for gaining a reference. So, often you can leave university with an academic reference, but it's also really great if you can leave university with a professional reference. And that's someone that can vouch for your ability to work hard in a workplace environment outside of university. So that's something that's really important. It might also be that when you leave university, if you did work somewhere you enjoyed or you worked with someone who you liked, you could contact them and ask them if they have any jobs. So having a network of professional people who you can reach out to is really, really helpful at any stage in your career. And as your career grows, you tend to build that network. So it's a really useful way of gaining new contacts. And finally, it's going to better your career prospects ultimately. So work experience helps you to stand out on your CV and at an interview and demonstrate the skills that employers want. And this brings me on to my next point, which is that we work a lot with employers. We speak to them quite a lot, and they tell us very similar things when they're speaking to us about what they want from students. They want from graduates rather, but they want students that have a good degree. So it's really important that you do focus on your academic work. But they also want students that have participated fully in university life. So, have gotten involved with things on campus or initiatives, or perhaps been a student ambassador or anything going on campus. And they value students that have work experience. So, as I said before, that could be anything. It could be a part-time job, it could be volunteering, it could be a full-time job, could be something structured like an internship or a placement. And ultimately, they want students that have built that work experience and then reflected upon it so that they can articulate their achievements. So, one of the important things to remember about employers is that they tend to speak in terms of skills. And that's why that point about work experience building skills is really important, because that's what you're going to talk about when you go for an interview or on an application. You're going to talk about skills that you've built. And that's the most important thing, is that you can build skills and then articulate and tell an employer you've got the skills they're looking for, because that's what gets you ultimately a job. So I'm going to move on now specifically to some work experience initiatives that we have at the university, and that are a really good place to start if you haven't got any work experience, or even if you do. So the first is something called the Roehampton Internship Scheme. Now I'm going to stop sharing my presentation and just show you on CareerLink, if I can share my screen with you. Bear with me. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. So, CareerLink, for those who aren't familiar with it, it's basically the website for careers, and you access it via the Nest. So, if you go to the Nest and then scroll down to, keep going, careers employability, this will take you to a page that you'll need to sign into with your Shibboleth login. Then hopefully that works. So some of you might be familiar with CareerLink, but this is essentially, as I said, the website for careers. It's got so many useful resources on here, which I can't go through now, but do take a look at it. Either here in this work experience panel, or at the top in internships and job search, you can get to something called the Roehampton Internship Scheme. So this is the page that I'm going to talk about, and this is the scheme that I'm going to talk about. So the Roehampton Internship Scheme, it offers paid internships, so they're all paid at London living wage, a bit over, so £12.05 an hour. And they offer internships with usually small and medium-sized employers that we build connections with. So across London, a lot of them nearby the university. Some are virtual, so some are based up in Scotland, but it's all done on a remote basis. And others are within West London or a bit further afield, but very much commutable for students. Now, importantly, the Roehampton Internship Scheme is exclusive to Roehampton students. And this is important because a lot of internships that are advertised publicly or in London are very competitive. If they're part of a big company like PwC or any other large company with a structured internship scheme, there's lots of students, lots of people applying to them. So it's definitely worth taking advantage of, because we often get around 10 to 15 applications per uh, opportunity, and that's actually quite good odds. And for internships that are public, they get many, many more applications, so it's far more competitive. So that's worth bearing in mind. If you scroll down, you'll see where the vacancies are. At the moment, we've actually only got one open, but I can tell you firsthand that more are on the way. So probably by the end of the week and by the end of next week, more will more will come up. Last week, if we'd had a look at this bit, there would have been 5 there. So it does come in sort of peaks, and there can be lots up, and then they might all have a similar closing date. But do keep an eye on it throughout the year. They're all part-time to fit around your studies, and then in the summer we will hope to source some full-time opportunities for students. And you have to apply. There's an application button that I won't click on. It takes you to an external portal where you have to submit your application. Um, and and you have to apply with a CV and with a cover letter. So I'm just going to stop sharing and bring my presentation up again so we can go back to that. Are there any questions about the Roehampton internship scheme so far, or is there any questions so far? Just put it in the chat and I'll get to it once my presentation's up. Okay. So, some further things that I may have missed. They, yeah, are usually local or remote with small, medium-sized employers. Some of them are funded with Santander universities, but it is a really good way to gain entry-level uh, structured work experience. They tend to be maximum of 83 hours, which is quite short, but once, part-time, depending on how it's structured for you and the employer, it might be that you do 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, and that would be over the course of around 8 weeks. So it can be very part-time, or it can really be, at your discretion, as long as you have that conversation with the employer and it suits their needs as well. So it's a really, really great scheme. Some things to remember is we receive a lot of applications from students for the Roehampton internship scheme where they have just sent off the same CV and the same cover letter for multiple roles. Now, this is never a good idea for any job. If you're applying to multiple jobs or multiple roles, you do need to tailor your CV and cover letter to each role that you're applying for. And this is true of the Roehampton internship scheme, but also if you do end up applying to placements or something else or anything really, you always need to tailor your CV so that you are highlighting the skills that are suitable for that role. And you need to look at the person specification of the role and tell the employer how you meet that person's specification. And if it's just a generic CV and cover letter, it's not going to do that. So I'm going to talk about support at the end of the session and where you can find the relevant support, so that you've got a plan to go away with. But do see a careers advisor if you want help with your CV and your cover letter, just generally. But also, if you want to have some help in tailoring it to specific roles or a specific application, that's definitely something our careers team can do. They're qualified careers advisors, so this is their skill set and they'll be able to help you. So that's just something worth bearing in mind about the internships. I'm now going to talk about the placement year option. Now, a lot of you said you were in your first year, but I know that there's one of you also, I think at least one of you in second year, and that's at the moment you are all able, whether you're in your first or second year, to do a placement year. So the placement year is an opportunity for you to spend a year gaining work experience whilst you're at the university. It's optional, you don't have to do it at all. But if you do it, it runs between your second and third year of your program, which means you take a year out of your studies to do a placement year and then you return to complete your third year. So as you can see, the structure here, you do your first year, your second year, you go off to do your placement year and you work full time in that year. And then you come back for your third year of study. So it makes your degree a 3-year degree to a 4-year degree, essentially. Importantly, placements aren't guaranteed. You do have to go and find one, but we can support you with that. So we have helped many students to find them. We do these talks quite regularly around how to search for placement year, and I'm going to cover some of that now. Um, and the length of a placement year, it tends to vary by employer. Sometimes it can be just over a year long, sometimes just under. For for our requirements, for the university requirements, it has to be a minimum of 9 months. So you have to work for at least 9 months for it to be counted as a placement year. Some other information that I've put together based on what students often ask me in these sessions. Um, if you are going to have a placement year, it should be as close to a full-time role as possible. Um, and you do remain a student during that year. So you do pay 10% of your normal tuition fees for the placement year. And that's because you still have access to services at the university, both online and also physical. So the physical spaces on campus, you still have access to all of that. So that's what that 10% costs. Um, you can expect to earn money for your placement year. This is a bit of a tricky one to discuss. There are unpaid placement years, and you are very welcome if you're able to take an unpaid placement year. However, I would say come and talk to our team once you source one if it is unpaid, and we can let you know if we think it's fair that it's unpaid. We'd want to make sure that the opportunity or the employer that is offering you an unpaid placement is justified in doing so. So we can advise around that, and we might be able to help you negotiate things like a travel expenses or lunch expenses. So that is also an option. Um, you do have to complete an assessment at the end of your placement year in order to pass. It's graded, but on a pass fail basis. And you can complete your placement year internationally as well as in the UK. There would just need to be a bit more support and a bit more due diligence at the beginning to make sure everything's safe. But otherwise, you can go abroad for your placement year. There is another section on Career Link where I won't take you to now. I won't get out of the presentation, but as you can see at that top panel, there's a whole page on placement year information, and that includes things like FAQs, any questions you've got around finance, accommodation. So do have a look at that tab if you are interested in the placement year option. Now, not to scare you, but placement years are really competitive, especially if you want to apply for a placement year with a Times top employer, a big firm that have placement schemes. There will be lots of other students from other universities applying for these placements. So this is where it differs from the Roehampton internship scheme, where those internships are short term and exclusive to Roehampton students. The placement year is competitive, and you will be competing with other students to gain them. But we can support you. And yeah, it will be hard work, but we can support you at every step of the way. And I'll go on to the support and a bit more about that a bit later. Some timescales, and this is where it might differ if you're a first year student or a second year student. So I'll try and explain um, in a simple way. The applications for placement years open early, and a lot of large company schemes that are the competitive schemes close before Christmas and the new year of your second year. So for anyone that's in their second year, you might find that if you wanted to do a financial placement year, for example, with a big company, that might have already closed. It probably closed just before Christmas or a couple of months ago. So for first years, this is worth bearing in mind because it means you need to start applying in the autumn term of your second year for these sorts of placements. You don't need to apply for anything in your first year because placement applications won't open until September 2023 for the following summer. But you will need to start thinking about it as soon as you get back to university. So it's just a word of warning to be prepared because as soon as you come back, you will need to think about applying. However, there are still plenty of opportunities in the spring, so around now, that are open for applications if you are a second year student. So don't give up hope that there are still ways of gaining a placement year at this stage in the year. And your placement will always start in summer. So for a second year, it will start in summer 2023. If you're a first year, it would start in summer 2024. Hopefully that makes sense, but I do appreciate it's a little bit confusing. Um, it can be really difficult with placement years, especially after everything I've said, to know where to start. So I would suggest that there are two routes. The first is around online placement sources. So this is using online resources, online platforms, job sites, where you can search for placements. I'm going to do this with you now, actually, because I think it's really useful to show you what is out there. So let me just share my screen again. So I'm just going to go to rate my placement, but not that one. So this is one of the largest placement based sites and job platforms. So you'd go find a placement, and then you need to check that the placement year along this sort of these sort of filters is appropriate for what you're looking for. So as I said, it must be a minimum of 9 months. So it can't be an internship, which is around 1 month. It needs to be this option, which is placement year 10 months. You might want to filter it by job role and the sector that you're interested in, and then also where you can work. There's no point looking at placement years in Yorkshire in the north of England if you can't actually get there. So if it is that you need to be in London and the surrounding areas, click these filters. But as you can see from these ones here, there are some placement years that are still open, not for very much longer, but they are still open. So enterprise rent a car, we've had students go on a placement year there just last year, and this current year they'll be finishing up their placement soon. There's finance placements closing soon. And if you keep scrolling, I'm pretty sure it's done by placement deadline. So we should get into March. You'll see that there is still stuff open. Now, there might not be stuff with the huge, big groups like PwC. They probably all closed, as I said, a bit earlier. Their application process is very early. But there are still companies offering different types of placements. In different areas. As I said, you need to be really careful about where the areas are. So that's just a bit of a demonstration about how these sort of online placements work. And then you click on them and you follow the online application process. Now, the online application process can take quite a lot of time. It can often be quite extensive. It might be that you need to send a CV and fill in some application questions. You might then need to do things like online tests. There might be a couple of interview stages. So that's just worth bearing in mind as well, especially if they're a bigger company with a formal placement scheme. There's likely to be a more rigorous and a longer term application process. Again, we can help with every step of that. So if you want support, we can really support you with that. Are there any questions about that route at all while I just bring the presentation back up? Okay, great. I'll continue. So the second route that we sometimes recommend, and actually this has worked really well with our current students, is for you to use your existing contacts and either existing contacts or essentially approach people speculatively. Now, what this means is that you're going to send a CV and a covering letter to an employer asking them whether they can offer you a placement year or an internship or something shorter term if you don't want to take a placement year without a position actually being advertised. So you're approaching them. You're being proactive with your CV and with your cover letter and saying, have you got any work experience like a placement year or an internship that you can offer me? And this works really, really well. So the student actually, I know that is currently doing a placement year at Enterprise Rent a Car, did so because they already had a part-time job there, and they decided, okay, well, I've already got a part-time job here. I work here at the weekends. I wonder if I could do a placement year here by speaking to someone in the HR team, which is what they did, and it was successful. So that's if you do have a part-time job, or if you volunteer anywhere, or if you've got any contacts in any industries, it's worth getting in touch with them and asking them if they've got opportunities available. And the reason this can be quite a good tactic for gaining work experience is that some employers just don't advertise, particularly smaller and more local employers. They just don't advertise placement opportunities, work experience opportunities. They may not even realize they need that extra resource because they're so busy doing their day to day. But I know if someone walked into my office and said, would you like some extra resource? I'd say, and they had a great CV, I'd be saying yes. So yeah, it's worth thinking about the fact that they may not have a formal placement scheme. They may not be big enough as a company to go down that route. So yeah, approach them to see if they can still offer you something. Um, and yeah, the other opportunity is that the other thing to bear in mind is that if your application stands out, if your CV is good enough and your job application or your cover letter is attractive, it will stand out and they may be really interested in offering you something. So this can be quite a useful and another route to gaining a placement year. And something that I would say is if you aren't sure whether to apply on Rate My Placement or similar sites like I've just shown you, or do this, then do a mixture, do a bit of both. You might want to target some smaller companies with a speculative application, and then also apply to the big companies that are quite competitive. And one of them, hopefully, if you send enough applications and they're of a good enough quality, one of them may pay off. So that's just worth thinking about which route to take. Now, so for the first years here, some tips for you if you would like to go on a placement year specifically. The first is go and get work experience. So maybe think about doing some internships as part of the Roehampton internship scheme, or some volunteering over the summer, or even a part-time job, just to build up your skills. Um, as I said, placement years are competitive, so it's never too late to get work experience. And you're going to need to, if you want to apply to some of the bigger companies that have formal placement schemes, you're going to need to stand out and show that you've already got skills that you can bring. So get work experience, get involved on campus, start expanding your network, and use LinkedIn for this. So if you don't have a LinkedIn account, I would recommend getting one, and start adding people who maybe did your course or a couple of years ahead of you, Roehampton alumni even, who are a couple of years ahead of you in a job that you ultimately would like to be in, and ask them how did they get there. It can never hurt to reach out to people and say, I do want to go on a placement year in a company similar to yours. You just never know what they might come back with. So think about what work experience you can get. Um, for second years, I know there's at least one of you who's a second year. Oh, just go back. Um, if you'd like to get a placement year, start looking now. So it isn't too late, but time is running out because you will need to source something by this summer, so June. As we saw, there are still opportunities available, and you can still go down that speculative route. But you need to act quite quickly and start looking now. And make a plan, keep a track of where you're applying to. As I said, do a mixture of larger applications and speculative applications, and make multiple high quality applications to improve your chances of gaining a placement year. Or this goes for any other work experience. Something really important just to add on to the end of the placement year discussion is that you must tell us if you're going on a placement year. It has to be approved by our office. So we have to do checks, we have to ensure suitability, and we have to make sure you're going into a safe and supportive environment. We need to collect forms from your employer. That it's nothing too arduous. It's nothing that's going to be too much for the employer, so don't worry. But we do need to check it's an appropriate placement year. We need to check that it's related to your course. Someone from your course, like a lecturer, will need to check that they're happy with the opportunity you're going on. And then this will allow our registry team to make appropriate changes to your program. So they'll move you from a 3-year degree to a 4-year degree with placement. So second year is your deadline to tell us if you have secured a placement year is 31st of August this year. So that's just worth bearing in mind. Are there any other questions about internships or placement years that anyone would like answering? And if so, please put it in the chat, or speak out loud, whatever works for you. Okay, if not, I'm going to continue and just talk quickly about the support and resources. Sorry if I keep going on mute, it's because I've got a cough, so just trying to save everyone from hearing that. As I said, we've got Career Link, which is a great opportunity, great resource. Do have a look on it if you haven't already. There's plenty more. There is far more than I showed you just then. I know I showed you a page or so. There's loads more help and resource. So do have a look on CareerLink. Around placement years in particular, as I said, there's an entire section on finding a placement, frequently asked questions, what you can be doing if you're in your first year or if you're in your second year, and what you need to do if you've secured a placement. And then one of the biggest pieces of advice I'd give you all is to make the most of the fact that our team, the placements and work experience team, and the careers team offer one-to-one advice and guidance in person or online. So we offer one-to-one appointments, and this really allows us to tailor advice to you. So they're all advertised on CareerLink all of the times. You just need to book on CareerLink. But this is a really useful resource. We can have a chat over about 20 minutes to half an hour. Um, Careers team can help specifically with your CV and career path guidance, and we can help you with finding work experience. Um, so yeah, that's where you can find support, and do make the most of it. Any questions at all? No, okay. If not, then that's fine. That's the end of the session. If you do have any questions, as I showed you in the last slide, these are our contact details. So do feel free to get in touch or book an appointment with us. Um, Thank you very much for attending and for participating. I hope you found it useful, and all the best with your search. Great. Thank you very much.